Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Had an interesting weekend. Had a very interesting weekend as I took my two kids. We packed up the Jeep and we headed west, made our way to Erie, Pennsylvania. As you may know, the workers at WebTech, they have gone on strike. And the WebTech workers are going, hey, look, we demand better. And not just better, we demand a say. And this is one of these weird things. Because again, we're headed out to WebTech, and the kids, excited, love walking picket lines. Moreover, they love getting stuff. But we get there, and the picket lines are full of people, and it's an incredible scene. And we go to the union hall, the UE union hall, and we had an opportunity to sit down and talk to a bunch of people. And it was one of these things that it makes no sense that these companies force these workers out on strike, because what they're asking for, not an awful lot, and actually in the best interest of the companies. And this is one of those things that gets me. Had the UAW bothered had the big three auto people bothered to listen to the UAW, they probably would have started making smaller cars sooner. They probably wouldn't have gotten their behinds kicked in the 80s, late 70s and early 80s, as the imports were coming in and basically eating their lunch. Had they listened to the UAW back in the 50s saying, look, we need to be moving this way, more fuel efficient, the union was looking further into the future and looking out for the company much more than the company was. Same thing with the steel workers and the big steel companies. The exact same things. The workers were saying, well, we need to be moving this along, which is counter to the narrative that you hear from right-wing, the unions just want to destroy companies. No, they want companies to be wildly profitable. Every company I've ever worked for, I've always wanted them to be profitable. Why? Simple, common sense. I would like better wages, hours, conditions. I would like more. So if they're doing better, we should be doing better. That's kind of how this game plays. And as we were in Erie, we were at the UE hall, and like I said, we were talking to different workers. We were talking to a bunch of people who were coming through, and the guy said, "Look, these were our demands, and they were reasonable. The idea that you protect seniority rights seems pretty reasonable. The idea that you have this ability to shift jobs with seniorities and bump down and temporary transfers, these are not huge money. Don't want a lot of money. These are workers saying that seniority matters. They wanted to stop the subcontracting and protect their work. Every union does this. They want to make sure that their healthcare benefits are protected and don't get worse and don't end up costing them more and all of this. And simple pay increases. The company's wildly profitable, and yet offering nickels. And this is one of these things where you go, UPS is doing the same thing to the Teamsters right now. There's a company made $13.9 billion last year, saying we have to have a cost neutral contract, which means no increases in our cost. But they made $13.9 billion profit, bought a bunch of shares of stock back, made those shareholders wealthier, but the workers not so much. One of the other things, the right to strike over grievances. Now, this is one of those things you go, well, why would you? It's an arrow in the quiver. And as the guy explained to me, when GE owned this plant and had for years and years and years, they had the right to strike over grievances, and over like a 40, 50 year period, did it 3 times. Things got done. When there's that arrow in the quiver, nobody wants that to be pulled out. Nobody on either side. So you actually work your problems out. Once it went away with the promise that we won't abuse it, well, the company abused it, and nothing now evidently gets settled. So by putting this arrow back in the quiver, it gives them the ability to get things done. Again, nobody wants to go on strike. None of these people were happy about the fact that they were out there, but they're out there because they knew what they were fighting for. And it's interesting when you listen to the people talk about what's important. What's important is protecting their job, protecting their way of life, protecting their family, protecting their community. This plant used to employ 15,000 people. It's now down to 1,400. This facility is key to that community. And the thing is we talk to some people on the street and they're like, yeah, this place is a major economic driver for this community, for all of these businesses you see on Main Street. And as we left Erie, because the kids, I figured, hey, we're 2 hours from Niagara Falls. Let's go take the kids up to the falls and see what's up there. As we drove through Erie, and not just through Erie, as we drove all the way up to Buffalo and north up to Niagara, it looked the same as most of the places we visited on our Working Class Heroes tour. Factories abandoned, crumbling. Thousands of jobs that at one point had supported families and supported the community gone, eviscerated, wiped out. Bad policy, bad government policy, free traders, the neoliberals, the supply side voodoo Reaganomic folks, the corporate types. Hey, we can make more profit overseas. We can bring those products back, sell it to those people. Well, we'll tell them it's cheaper to start. Get them hooked on the cheap stuff. And then, as they get used to it, we'll charge them more. Profits for corporations are wildly up. Working people are struggling. And as you go through these communities, it's so clear. And we talked about this all through October. And look, I've been talking about this for a couple of decades now. As you lose that anchor, as you lose that productive facility that employed thousands of people, put money in thousands of families' pockets, that money went into the community. That thing that you put raw material into and came out with a finished product, a value-added product that you sold not just in the community but across the country, across the globe, was the basis of a middle-class existence in this country. And we understood this in the 50s, and government procurement understood that as well. So when that plant, that GE plant in Erie was making locomotives and 15,000 people were working there, and you had a government saying, look, we're going to buy American. You had other companies in this country, patriotic American companies, saying, we're going to buy American-made products. That place was humming. That community was humming. That Main Street had all of the buildings full, all of the storefronts full, and thriving. And what happened? That anchor collapsed. And we were up in Niagara, New York, and it was man, you were driving through that area and all of the abandoned factories there. And you drive through Main Street where you look at it and you go, this used to be that American dream town. You could see from the dilapidated wood and the unpainted, the all of the crumbling and all of the decay of that community. You could see that it was a once really prosperous place. And look, Main Street has always had, the barber and the baker and the general store and you name it, the tailor and the shoemaker, and all down there. You drive through now, and what do you get? Tattoo artists, palm readings, people to come clean your house, restaurants making a go at it. All places dependent on people that have disposable income and struggling because most people don't. And this is the thing that gets me, because you go back to my grandparents' generation. One income could sort of support a family. One income. My grandfather's income was able to support a family. My grandmother stayed home to raise the kids until they were like 15, 16, and then she went into the workforce for extra money, for retirement money, for whatever. But it wasn't until the kids were done. One income could support a family. Then, one income could no longer do that. Thank you, neoliberals and supply-side voodoo Reaganomics. Thank you, bad policy. Thank you, deregulation. Thank you, corporate speak in our politics. Now you needed two incomes. Now that voluntary second income, my grandmother going in the workplace, For the people who would be my parents' generation, now it became two parents had to. And it's been that way for a very long time. And I've been saying, we're now past the two incomes. Two incomes no longer make it. Now you're going to need a third income, which is why Iowa changed their labor laws. In fact, it is going into effect as we speak. Hey, we can have young kids working on the kill floor there at the meatpacking plant. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it great that those children get an opportunity to learn a skill that to compete with their parents? Isn't that great? Why? Because we need a third income. Families can't support on two anymore. They need a third income. And that's why we got to put kids into the workforce. Let that sink in. That's why we've got to put children into the workforce, because families can't get by. In fact, back in February, we talked about a Fortune story that came out that said, hey, overemployment is here. And overemployment doesn't mean you're more qualified for your job. Overemployment means you got 2 jobs, 3 jobs, that people are working more and more and more only to make less and less. In fact, they said 37% of the respondents in January of 23 of the people that they polled said that they have more than one full-time job. And among those only working one full-time job, 57% said they're considering another one. So you got almost 40% of the workforce saying, I got 2 jobs because I needed to make ends meet. And 57% saying, well, I'm kind of thinking about it. The other 57 going, I'm kind of thinking about it because I might need it. And it's not because, well, I'm bored. It's not because, I have so much free time. It's not because, I just love working. I love working. It makes me so, it's invigorating. That's not what it is. You know what it is? Of course you know what it is. They're broke. They need the money. Nobody trades hours of their life away to do things that they don't want to do. That's called work because they just like it. They do it because they've got to bring money home to put food on the table, keep a roof over the kid's head. And especially as inflation is going higher and higher, the sad reality again, thank you, corporate America. You abandon our shores. You bring these products back, jack up the price so that you can make higher profits. And this is what was done. And don't give me any, Joe Biden spent money. So no, this is corporate America going, hey, here's a good excuse. Here's a good reason to stick it to those consumers. And it's what they've done. And the sad reality is we haven't revolted. Our wages haven't kept up. You're seeing some revolt. These web tech workers saying, look, we're not going to let this gold standard job of this community be diminished. We're not going to allow this to be destroyed. Because understand, and this is what Main Street understood, the money that they're fighting for, the extra wages that they're fighting for, that's Main Street's money. It's not the workers' money. That's Main Street's money. That's those shopkeepers that are able to stay open. That's Dombrowski's on the around the corner that stays open, being able to have incredible breakfast, by the way. That's them being able to stay open because those workers have disposable income. They've got a little extra money in their pocket, and they're able to spend it on Main Street. So I hear people go, well, they make too much money. No, they make enough to keep this community moving, and you should want more people doing that because that's how Main Street thrives. Not by these big corporations taking that profit that their labor earns out of the community and sends it to Wall Street. Because Wall Street does really well, thank you very much. It's those workers who are getting screwed. So for me, this is a simple one, an easy one. Every community should be behind their workers. Every community should be holding these companies accountable. And we should be voting on politicians who are not saying, we're going to slash and burn government. We're going to drag it in the bathtub and drown it in the bathtub. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, hey, maybe the stuff that we buy should be made by American workers here at home. Maybe lowest cost isn't the best option in every scenario. Maybe the Chinese steel that they used on that Bay Bridge, not in the best interest of our national security or our country or the economy. Just kind of throwing that out there. Because we used to understand that. We used to have people in this country who thought for the betterment of society instead of just their own pockets. And maybe the next generation gets it. Because the current crop of Republicans sure as shine doesn't. So we got work to do. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'll tell you, it was depressing, and it was distress. We got to do better. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Time to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our quote of the day, and I generally try and stay away from quoting Turd Blossom, Karl Rove. He was quoted by Axios. I think we're at a point in our country's history where people are dying for a generational shift. The party that figures has the upper hand in the next, figures that out has the upper hand in the next election and in the next year. I agree with this. The people who figure out how to get the next generation on their side, the Zoomers. And I think Democrats are leaning in that direction. I think that's happening because of just how bad Republicans have been. Just how crazy they have been, especially the Supreme Court, how extreme that court has become. And I look to religion as the leading driver of real danger and crazy. Someone sent me this Watchman's Creed, and it is frightening. These are religious people praying. This is like a declaration of war by our good God-fearing Christian folk. This is the creed, and I gotta kind of read through this. It says, as a patriot of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God and the Great Commission. Secondly, I agree to be a watchman over our nation concerning its people and their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth. We have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. We are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth. Through the power of God, we are the world influencers. Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. The enemy, anyone who doesn't believe what they believe. They have been given dominion over the non-believers. That's you and me. These folks are nuts. And look, there was a room full of people chanting this, whilst chanting USA behind it, which is really kooky. And they make their declarations. We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the Constitution. We decree that our legislative branch will only write laws that are righteous, and constitutional. We decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are biblical and constitutional. We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, in every evil attempt against our nation. You're kind of looking like an occult. We declare, and we now take back our God-given freedoms according to the Constitution. We declare that we take back influence at the local level in our communities. We decree that we take back and permanently control positions of authority, blah, blah, blah. And they go through this for a bit more. And you know, we're going to save a country. We're never going to take evil. We're going to do all this stuff. And I got to tell you, I'm reading this and I'm going, this is frightening. And it's the reason that people going to church is declining. It's the reason that people are walking away from religion, because the lunatics, the fringe, have taken over. And there's part of me that says, oh, it's okay. It's okay. That it's the reason church attendance is nosediving. But we're in a moment where the moderating effects of everybody else into these spaces is now not there. Same thing with our politics. The moderating voices of the center, gone. And now you've got crazy. And this, sadly, what's going on in our religious spaces. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, what's your thought?
They're all whack jobs.
Okay.
No, they are. It's scary.
Yes.
Our local ones in the neighborhood were going on and on about some of this nonsense over the weekend, and they were coming off. They're still stuck on Fauci and all this kind of stuff. And I said to them, I said, what does that have to do with anything? And they were, basically Fauci and his wife own all this stock, and they're in on the COVID thing. And I said, listen, because, I had a bad weekend. Let me tell you, you don't want to know about me in the flat tire with the lawnmower. So I was just like, I flat out told him, I said, you are being lied to. It's a bunch of conspiracy nonsense. Stop reading the Veritas Project nonsense. Stop watching Fox News and get a life, for God's sakes. But it is what it is, Rick. They're all crazy.
I'm with you. There you go. Thank you, Alice. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You as well. No, I've told the story of my friend who used to reach into the box of snakes. There are people who do this kind of stuff. And look, God bless them. Good for them. I hope it makes them happy. The problem is when they start coming into the public spaces saying that religion is going to, their faith, what they believe, is going to dictate for the rest of society what it has to believe. That's where, again, this line between religion and state, very clear and should remain very clear. But they understand. They understand power. And they talk about the seven mountains of influence being media, business, family, education, politics, arts and entertainment, and religion. And the money from these groups are influencing all of that. And I would argue in very dangerous ways. They've got deep pockets. They want to take over education. They talk about groomers. Here it is. This stuff is groomer. This is groomer central. Be afraid. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got any questions, comments? Shoot me that email. Also, check out our website, thericksmithshow.com, where you can grab our podcast. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day Secretary of Labor Frances Perkins announced that sit-down strikes were unsuited to America and believed labor unions would abandon using the tactic altogether. Her declaration came in the form of an open letter to Republican Congressman William Ditter of Pennsylvania. In the wake of the Flint sit-down strike, he had insisted on clarification of her perspective towards sit-down strikes. 1937 had been rocked by a wave of sit-downs everywhere. Workers made huge gains using the tactic, especially during the historic GM strike in Flint, Michigan. During the strike, Secretary Perkins asserted that the legality of sit-downs had not yet been determined. In her open letter, Perkins noted that she accepted the opinion of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. That court had just ruled that thousands of striking hosiery workers at Apex Hosiery in Philadelphia had acted unlawfully when they employed the tactic in their tumultuous strike weeks before. She added, quote, "It is not and never has been an official position of the Department of Labor or the Secretary that sit-down strikes are either lawful, desirable, or appropriate. In fact, the officers of the Department and the Secretary have urged union leaders and members not to use the method and to bend every effort to take men out of a plant where used. It is also full of hazards to the progressive democratic development of trade unionism and to the orderly process of collective bargaining and cooperation with employers on the basis of a recognized status." Perkins' statement helped provide the basis for a legal backlash against the tactic, ruled illegal just 2 years later. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
The political extremists demanding that government control every woman's personal reproductive decisions claim that they are pro-life. But that's a rhetorical fraud. Look at their overall policy agenda, and you will see that they are merely pro-birth. After that, adios, baby, good luck. They consistently join Republican lawmakers to kill public programs that deliver essential real-life needs to babies after they're born. Consider child care, a fundamental need in any society. Yet, the leaders of our rich, sophisticated nation that supposedly treasures family, work, and children have created a Menji system that literally is a crying shame, revealing that our society deliberately does not care for children. Here's reality for you. 98% of American workers are better paid than those we entrust to care for our children. Working at a nail salon, loading boxes at an Amazon warehouse, flipping burgers at McDonald's are jobs given more pay and respect than most child care jobs. This is not just a poor people's problem, for the lack of child care availability, affordability, and quality is a looming crisis for a majority of American families. Nonetheless, Republicans, enabled by corporate Democrat Joe Manchin, recently killed funding for a program to both raise worker pay and lower the prices families are charged. Such care is too expensive, squawk the same lawmakers who routinely dole out billions in welfare to corporate profiteers. But wait, the GOP has come up with a genius, low-cost solution. Relax safety and educational requirements for child care centers, as Iowa and Montana have already done, allowing 16-year-olds to provide care for up to 15 children each. This is Jim Hightower saying, to support life, not just birth, join up with the First 5 Years Fund, ffyf.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Here in Erie, Pennsylvania, I'm sitting here with Carl Rosen. Carl is the president of UE, United Electrical. We are in the UE 506 Union Hall as the web tech workers are on strike. As you may remember, we had Carl on the program the night that these workers went on strike. Laid a little basis. Thought it'd be interesting to get him back and see where we are. Carl, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me here, and thanks for keeping this story out there in front of folks so people know what's going on.
No, this is really important. I mean, the largest industrial strike going on in the country right now. For the time being, I guess the machinists are looking at going on strike here soon. How are things going?
Going very well. The strike is 100% solid. This local is a well-oiled machine. They're making sure people are fed, and all the supplies that are needed on the picket line are there. They're getting tremendous community support. Lots of other unions and other organizations showing up in solidarity. It's a textbook example of how to prepare for and run an effective strike. This plant is effectively shut down. A company might be having some management personnel and others trying to move some things around, et cetera, in there. Actually,
screw some things up.
The reports we're getting is they've done some damage to some heavy equipment in there already.
Never surprising.
Right.
And it's amazing how when management does that, they're so grateful to see you come back. But here we are in this moment again, and nobody does a strike like you guys do. I got to be honest with you. Some of your members, some of the most militant members that I've ever met. But this shouldn't have to happen, Carl. I mean, this shouldn't be happening.
It absolutely shouldn't, and this management is it's real malfeasance on their part to not recognize that things have shifted a little bit. This isn't the 1980s anymore. Workers realize that they've got some power and they're exercising it, and management, which has had most of the power up to now, has to recognize they got to bend a little bit, and it'll be for the good of the company. I mean, half the issues that are on the table right now are actually things where it would be to the company's benefit to make the changes. That would help them manage the plant better, even on some of these things. And it's just it's pigheadness on their side, because we want to do it our way because it's our way.
Yeah, we've got some bean counter or somebody who just came out of college who thinks they know how to do it. They've done it on paper. Works on paper.
Yeah. No, it's shameful, and even increasing the pay that, especially for like the younger workers that are being brought in, that they're paying abysmally low wages and making it take a long time to get up to full rate. That's not in the long-term benefit of the company. They're not going to have a stable workforce. They're not going to have a skilled workforce. They're not going to be able to do what this plant has always done, which is to produce the best locomotives in the world.
And the other part of this, the thing, I know why companies wanted the two-tier wage system. They wanted to slow down the progression of wages, but they also wanted to cause division in the workplace. That doesn't work for them very well anymore.
No. In fact, the support for the senior workers who have what's called the legacy rate is extremely solid to bring up the wages of those who've been hired in at lower starting rates. They don't want to be working side by side with somebody who's not getting paid a fair wage, and so it's one of the strongest issues out there that we see when we're talking to the members, when we're surveying the members. They all want to see that progression improved greatly.
Now, this is a profitable company, right? I mean,
Very
I've looked at the number. They're really profitable.
Extremely profitable and increasing profits and beating expectations out of this plant in particular. They were crowing about 5 quarters in a row. They beat expectations for this plant. And, I don't think they're going to this quarter.
No, but this is the thing that gets me, Carl. And I've seen this in place after place. It's the same thing. We went through Iowa, when places were on strike there. Ingredion was on strike. Case New Holland was on strike. And it's the same story. Our workers are the best. Thank you for the hard work that you do. Thank you for making us the best plant in our entire systems. But no, we're not going to respect you with decent wages. No, we're not going to respect you with health care that's going to protect your family. It seems so short-sighted. Maybe am I missing something?
Not at all. But this is what happens when greed and short-term profits get in the way of actually running a quality enterprise.
But that profit thing, I mean, if these places were humming along, and as you said, making huge profits for them. Why would you stick a fly in the ointment there? Why would you stop that golden goose? I'm struggling with it.
Yeah, well, look, it's a lot of it has to do with power, and they want to feel they've got all the power. They want to have the monopoly on the power and be able to tell people, do this, do that, jump, because I said to jump. And when workers start, to challenge that to some extent, they feel they got to stomp on them.
Is that what it is?
It's certainly no small part of it. Absolutely. The question of control of the workplace floor and how people are going to be treated on an everyday basis is absolutely a key part. I mean, that's part of why these workers are on a big part, because management was allowed to be such jerks to them on things they didn't need to.
Yeah.
But just because they could get away with it and they wanted to show who was boss.
Yeah, I had someone not too long ago tell me that a lot of the organizing that's happening now is not necessarily even about wages. It's about treatment.
Right.
It's about working conditions. It's about how people are being treated and disrespected. So am I surprised that this is an issue? Not really.
No, that's right, and it's absolutely true here. It's being said at union meetings, et cetera. Wages are not the number one issue here. other than to the extent the progression, which is really a fair treatment issue, right? It's because it's creating those divisions and treating some people less than others. But the overall wage rates, I mean, yes, people want to keep up with inflation, et cetera, but it's not about getting huge wage increases. It's about how they're being treated. It's about making sure that there's going to be stability there going into the future, including, we've challenged the company to make a commitment that the locomotives of the future are going to be built, and they're going to be built here, and work with us on that. Crickets, we got nothing back from them on that. We put those proposals in front of them multiple times. Not a single thing are they interested in making any commitments around. Instead, they make threats that they're going to lay people off and not have jobs going forward. It's just, ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I think of the UAW and the auto industry back in the 60s. Had the auto industry listened to the UAW and started building smaller cars and more fuel-efficient cars back in the 70s and in the 80s, they probably wouldn't have been in any of the problems that they're in now. Mm-hmm. And I see the same thing here. I mean, you're advocating for the future. They're sticking in the past.
Right, or at least not making the moves that could be made to really get positioned going forward, including with having a skilled workforce here ready and able to build those. And that means investing in the workers and not hiring people off the street at wages that aren't much better than you can get at a McDonald's at this point.
That's the part that's amazing to me. We talked to a couple of other folks who are doing jobs that are fairly dangerous for $15-16 an hour, and you go, how do you support a family on that? How do you put yourself in danger for that, let alone support a family? To me, the wages kind of are a sign of respect, a sign of dignity, and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you want to have a stable workforce or not? That's really the question at the end of the day.
So are there any ongoing negotiations? You guys, they've been on strike for what now?
A week and a day. A week and 2 days. So this coming Thursday, the July 6th, there is a meeting scheduled between the two parties with the mediator. We will be there ready to bargain, and we've been ready to bargain literally in the phone call that UE Local 506 President Scott Slauson made to company HR person to inform her that the membership had voted to strike and not to accept the offer that the company had on the table. He said, we're going out, but we're ready to meet and bargain at any time. And it's taken them 2 full weeks to agree to come to a meeting. We don't know if they're going to come prepared to bargain or not. If they are, we can try and get a contract done. If they aren't, the fight's going to continue on until they come to their senses.
Yeah. As I've been saying here on the program, I look at Washington. We've got a president who's the most pro-union in my lifetime. Has there been any outreach to the administration to maybe, put a little pressure, get some messaging this way, involved at all?
So we've certainly outreached in various directions to various elected officials, and we'll let them speak for themselves in terms of what they want to say. We are happy that we've had good, strong statements of support coming out of both the state and federal elected official levels, and we expect to see more of that.
No, because this is one of these situations where if you're going to be moving forward to the new economy, let's say, you're moving to that clean green stuff that they keep pushing on us and saying that this is the future, it's got to come with jobs that are worth having.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just for individuals, but for the community. I look at this plant and the 1,400 workers here as integral to this community. And some of the people we've talked to said this is the heart and soul of this community.
That's right. Look, this is one of the best generators of community solidness for Erie. I mean, these are good living wage jobs, ones that people can have for a lifetime and that they can raise a family on. And that's the kind of thing that makes a community hold together. And we need to see more of that, not less. And look, there is a lot of federal money out there around infrastructure, around things for making a cleaner environment, et cetera. Some of that is going to flow in one way or another into the rail industry. And we absolutely want the federal government to be weighing down hard that ought to go for good living wage jobs, for union jobs at facilities like that. And that, to the extent that companies are refusing to get along with their workers, refusing to treat them fairly, frankly, they should be punished by not being recipients.
No, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Carl Rosen. Carl's the president of UE, United Electrical. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at their website. Because the reason I bring this up is if this is the model, if the model is we're going to bring batteries in and solar panels and windmills and all the future stuff, and we're going to go into communities that have been, had been depleted. They're the used to be's that we went through back in October and November. This is kind of a model of maybe how it should be done, as opposed to the low road model that I see happening. So I'm advocating for you guys this direction.
Absolutely. And look, and this is the point of what we call the Green Locomotive Project, which is to get the railroads to have to buy new locomotives and get rid of the old ones that are sitting there polluting terribly this country, contributing to climate change, contributing particularly to diesel pollution all around the rail yards. Most of those rail yards are surrounded by people, working class neighborhoods, lower income, frequently people of color, and those folks are having to breathe those fumes, as are the rail workers who are working in those yards. And all of this could be dealt with. The technology is there to have much cleaner locomotives out there right now, and even cleaner ones coming in the years to come. We believe the federal government and the state government should be forcing the railroads to upgrade to newer locomotives. And we believe that Wabtec should be committing to produce those here at this plant with this workforce and expand this workforce. And we commissioned an economic impact study on that from an institute at the University of Massachusetts. They did a study and showed the thousands of good jobs that could be created doing that over the next couple decades if that investment was made.
Yeah, and not just the jobs working for the company, but that reverberation downstream.
Absolutely. The parts suppliers, the people that, will be building houses for the workers and supplying them with clothes and food and everything else. Yeah, it creates a lot of jobs, much of which would be in Northeast Pennsylvania, which really needs it. This is a depressed area. You drive around Erie and you see old factory after old factory that's either reduced to rubble or is just barely standing at this point. You'd be really helping this area, but some of them spread out into other industrial areas nearby in Ohio and upstate New York, but also there'll be supplies from across the country. It really is such a sensible thing for our country to do. And the railroads have plenty of money and could afford to start buying the new locomotives, but, they're not going to, as we can tell with what we've seen them go through the last couple of years on safety issues, on how they treated their own workers, et cetera, they won't do anything unless they're forced to. Well, that's the role of the federal government, is force them to clean up their act.
What do you say to the person, though, Carl, who goes, how's an electric train going to move all the freight that we need done? How are you going to do this with an electric locomotive?
Well, first of all, they're doing it in Europe right now, so it can be done. But second, we've got all kinds of increased technology now that can make it very doable, including there's battery locomotives now that have been shown to work in tandem with the traditional diesel locomotives. There's much cleaner diesel locomotives that put out something like 85% less pollutants that could be, that have been available for a decade now, and that the railroads, that should have been converting to already. You put those together, and then when you roll into the city, you only use the battery one. And in the rail yards, there's no problem. You could electrify the whole thing, or just use the battery ones entirely and charge them up. I mean, there's no problem on that. There's also in development. Moving over to hydrogen fuel cell locomotives too, which can be clean burning, totally no emissions. So there's lots of possibilities here. It's just a question of the railroads actually saying, all right, we're going to convert, and they'll have what they need.
Them being encouraged to do it. So
required is, I think, what's going to have to happen.
I'll say you use required. I'll say encouraged. But who's making those green locomotives in Europe then? And do we have the capacity here?
So what you have
now?
Yeah, what you have in Europe more is electrified locomotives. So they aren't battery operated. They have the overhead lines.
Oh, okay.
And that's the issue in the U.S. Really big spread out country, mountains, all kinds of things that you'd have to go through. So to electrify all the lines across the country, that can be done, but that's more like a 20, 30-year project, not
Right.
a 5 to 10-year project.
No, because the reason I ask is because, I know we don't make any like subway cars. Any of the, the buses we struggle making. There's a bunch of stuff we don't make. You got Chinese companies that have come in and built plants that we're not doing. And I'm like, I don't want to lose this too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, the technology's there, right? The rest of the world is using a lot of this technology ahead of us. That's right. And there's no reason we can't be doing it in this country. Again, you have to have the market for it. You have the market for it when the big institutions, whether it be public transportation or private railroads or whoever else, when they're required to do this, and you do that through laws and government regulation. And I'm glad to say that the EPA right now has in front of them a rule that would allow the states to have a much higher level of regulation on train emissions, and California is moving on that. The railroads are probably going to go into court to sue to try to stop it. We need to fight back against that and get this into effect. And we actually need the EPA to set stronger federal standards. And there's going to be a hearing in the U.S. Senate in one of the subcommittees towards the end of July that's going to go exactly into these issues. And we're glad to see that it's happening, and we're going to be participating in those hearings.
No, that's great. I hope you'll come back and talk to us when that happens. But my fear, again, is we do all that stuff and the Supreme Court just shoots it all down.
And that's why we need a people's movement to make sure they can't do that.
So let's bring this back to Erie and what's going on here and how we move, how we get this done, how we get this over with, because nobody wants to be on strike. Nobody wants to miss a day, let alone a week or 2 weeks. What's it going to take to get this done, and how can we help move in that direction?
Well, to get it done, basically, is for the company to get realistic about their proposals. We have nothing outrageous on the table on the union side, and they've asked us. Local management got nervous that a strike was coming, and they actually came and asked the union local what would it take. Tell us the things that you need in order to settle this. We gave them a list of 8 items, none of which were outrageous, and they looked at it, and they took it up the corporate ladder, and somebody up the corporate ladder said, no, don't give them a single one. And that's why we're on strike. If they could have moved on some of those or most of those, we wouldn't have ended up out there. Once you're on strike, things get a little more momentum. I think workers are going to be expecting more even at this point. They understand their power, and, this company made a grave miscalculation. On the other hand, on your second question about what can people do to help, love to see people come out to the picket lines, drive by, honk. If you want to come and bring water or anything like that, people always appreciate that. Just help keep people going on the picket line and give them relief as needed. And I think that's all good, and statements of solidarity from other unions are always appreciated too. And we've had a good number of unions come out here already. We've got more coming, and it really is greatly appreciated.
Good stuff. Good stuff indeed. I wish you guys the best. One day longer, one day stronger. I'm hoping that this is short, and I hope you get what you need.
Okay, thanks so much, Rick.
Carl, I appreciate the time. Carl Rosen, president of UE. United Electrical. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1835. That was the day that textile workers walked off the job at 20 mills in Paterson, New Jersey. But this was not a strike like we might picture one today, with burly men walking the picket line or women chanting as they carry picket signs. In Paterson, most of the strikers were children, ages 10 to 18. Many were young girls. Child labor was in high demand in the silk mills because of their small, nimble fingers. The children walked off the job because they wanted an 11-hour workday and a 6-day work week. They were tired of working 13 grueling hours a day, 7 days a week. Soon, their parents formed the Paterson Association for the Protection of the Working Class to support the strikers. There were were no labor unions in Patterson back then, the company refused to negotiate. Women textile workers at other mills in the area also walked off the job. At its peak, 2,000 workers had walked out on strike. Finally, after 6 long weeks, the company agreed to a compromise. They settled on 5 12-hour days and 9 hours on Saturday. The children went back to work to a 69-hour work week. Strike leaders were blacklisted from the mills. This would not be the last time that child laborers took a stand on the job. In 1912, children workers were an important part of the famous Bread and Roses strike of Lawrence, Massachusetts textile workers. In 1933, children workers in Allentown, Pennsylvania sweatshops joined in a strike. Their participation led the governor's wife to join them on the picket line. The strikers there won an increase in wages and reduced hours. Children fought against their exploitation by taking to the picket lines. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So Elon Musk is making the Twitters crazy again. And look, as I said from the beginning, I believe he bought Twitter specifically to destroy it, and he's doing a great job making me right. Whether that was the idea or not, he's doing a really good job. And he's making Twitter crazy. It's a cesspool now. There's nothing positive that comes out of it, other than crazy right-wing white nationalists and those folks having paid their $8 to get attention. That's what it's been. So what he's done now, and this is interesting, what he's done now is he's put in viewing limits. Originally it was if you had a verified account, that means you were paying him. You could read 6,000 posts a day. You could read your followers' posts, and some people read that many. If you were an unverified account, which I'm never giving him a dime, you can only see 600 posts a day. And if you're a new unverified account, which means you're new to Twitter and you're not paying Elon Musk, you can only look at 300 a day. Well, that made people upset, and it got him a kind of a bad name. So he said, no. What we're going to do is we'll soon increase it to 8,000 for verified, 800 for unverified, and 400 for the new unverified. Because we're making this big thing. Now, what's interesting is not that his justification is accurate. He said that the reason he was doing it is because, how did it put? The reason I set the view limit is because we are all Twitter addicts and need to go outside. He said, I'm doing a good deed for the world here. Also, that's another view you just used. The reality here is he broke Twitter and doesn't know how to fix it. He fired a bunch of people who have no idea how to deal with the traffic. So have you ever, it's like if someone docks you, you get, all these out of service errors because you don't have the servers to keep up. They fired all the people who knew where the servers were and knew how to route all this traffic to ensure it doesn't go down. That's why he's doing it. But, no. It's because I care about you and I want you. Get out of here, you moron. And look, somebody will buy it. Somebody will buy it. Just like how he suggested that voting rights should be limited to parents. No longer white land-owning males. No, parents, because they have a stake in the future. That's the argument. They care about their kids, care about the future. Only parents should be allowed to vote. And I guess his other argument, this would encourage people to want to be parents. So let me ask you, if someone with 10 kids, they get 10 votes? Crazy religious people would want that. It's coming next, I guarantee it. It's going to take a quick break. Right back, stick around. Zoom.
Canada's wildfire season is now officially the worst ever recorded.
Canada's fires shatter records, sending smoky air back to the U.S. and to Europe. Intensifying rainstorms pose hidden flood risk across U.S. Plus,
to remove PFAS from public water systems across the country is an enormously expensive endeavor.
3M settles another lawsuit over forever chemicals in municipal drinking water systems.
All of those toxic stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
They want to take away your washing machines and your dryers.
Nope, they don't.
They don't want to give you any water for the washing machine.
Also a lie. This is your Green News Report. Hey, sorry that we got to fire up the Donald Trump fact-checking again, but so be it. What do you have for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, smoky summers may be our new normal in the U.S. Air quality is again plummeting for millions of Americans, this time in the upper Midwest and Northeast, due to smoke from Canadian wildfires. This week, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit vied for the city with the worst air quality in the world. The Canadian smoke has even crossed the Atlantic Ocean to hit the UK and Spain. Officials in Canada say 2023 is officially Canada's biggest fire season in modern history, with fires coast to coast, driven by unusually hot and dry weather. And it's not even peak fire season yet. Canada's wildfire emissions are also breaking records. Europe's climate service Copernicus reports that over the last 20 years, Canada's carbon emissions from wildfires have increased along with the land area burned. This year, Canada's fires have released 85% of its annual average greenhouse emissions. That's roughly equivalent to Indonesia's annual carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels. Abundant scientific evidence shows human-caused climate change is intensifying wildfires, creating a self-reinforcing feedback loop as the fires send more climate warming emissions into the atmosphere, in turn worsening global warming and wildfire conditions.
Yeah, but think about all the money that Canada's made from all that dirty tar sands oil.
Good point. In Texas, the relentless, record-shattering heat wave has sent hundreds of people to emergency rooms and killed at least 13, including in the state's prisons, which mostly have no air conditioning.
Wow.
Extreme heat now kills more people in the United States than any other weather event, according to federal data. Especially dangerous are multiple consecutive days of extreme heat and warm overnights that don't allow our bodies to cool down. A recent Climate Central analysis projects that today's record highs will be average summer temperatures by 2050, with the South forecast to see 2 full months over 100 degrees.
And Texas has seen triple-digit temperatures now in its third week.
A different study warns that intensifying rainstorms pose hidden flood risks across the U.S. The First Street Foundation finds that rainstorms are capable of dumping significantly more water than federal data indicates in some regions. That means data used to set design standards for new infrastructure is outdated and understates the risk of extreme rain and flood events, particularly in the Northeast and along the Gulf Coast. Climate change has increased the intensity and frequency of severe rainstorms in recent decades, and that is raising the risk of U.S. flood control failure. In accountability news, Minnesota-based chemical giant 3M will pay more than $10 billion to settle a lawsuit alleging that its toxic PFAS chemicals contaminated U.S. public drinking water systems. It's the latest among several cases pending against the company. PFAS chemicals are used in firefighting foam, non-stick applications, and a host of consumer products, and are linked to cancers and birth defects. They're called forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment and are incredibly costly to remove, according to Scott Summey, one of the attorneys representing the municipalities that sued.
These water systems have to install expensive water treatment in order to remove the chemicals. This settlement, being the largest drinking water settlement in American history, will go a long way.
I guess they thought there'd be forever profits from those forever chemicals.
Finally, some good news. The Biden administration proposed new rules to restore protections to the Endangered Species Act that had been rolled back by disgraced former President Donald Trump. The new proposed rules will make it easier to protect wildlife from climate disruptions and other threats, make it harder to remove a species from the endangered list, and eliminates a Trump-era policy that allowed regulators to consider economic issues like lost profits for the oil and gas industry when deciding whether a species deserves protections.
Good. We will take what we can get. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So what an interesting weekend of Maniacs for Misery. Had their big conference in Philadelphia. We talked about it. This the new Tea Party. Understand, this the new billionaire-funded, shiny AstroTurf group of crazy people coming together, figuring out how to get other crazy people to come together and cause chaos. This is the new Tea Party. Now, what's interesting to me is they talk about free speech. They talk about how much they care about free speech. They talk about how much free speech is important, how we should teach free speech. But interestingly enough, they threw my next guest out of their little thing because she was, that's right, exercising free speech. And that's why I've asked my good friend Pat LaMarche to come share some thoughts. She is one of my favorite authors, in fact, authored my book, a homeless awareness advocate, and also a writer over at the Bucks County Beacon. Pat LaMarche, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for letting me have a voice.
So, again, the Tea Party folks there at the Misery Moms Convention, what got you canned? What got you thrown out?
Well, they had sent us, first of all, I can't believe they let me in. So I figure that's the first thing that happened was I applied for press pass and I got one. And, you know, if they paid attention to the fact that we actually tell the truth, they might not have actually let us in to begin with. But when we got there, they gave us this paperwork about how we could be at all the stuff they wanted publicity for, right? The presidential candidates, we could sit there and get insulted and they could tell everybody that we were the problem with the country. But they had these breakout sessions and we couldn't go to those. So I got a hold of the people, one little underling, quite jovial person named Marley. She was the one handling everything. And I told her, I said, look, you know, these big names that come to town, I'm from Pennsylvania, these big names that come to town, we're just not that interested in those.
Nope.
You know, you got NBC and CBS and everybody here for that. We're interested in what's happening in these breakout sessions and what grassroots sort of, you know, work you're doing. And that's what I'd like to get into. So even though they gave everybody paperwork that said we wouldn't be allowed in these breakout sessions, they said that I could go in. And this other guy that I'd been hanging out with, who was a photojournalist and a documentarian, that we could go in and but we had to be escorted. And then they wouldn't let us go to the ones we wanted to go to. The only one we could go into was the sexuality one. So we said, fine, escort us. We got zero rules, zero protocols. So we went to it. I was texting pretty constantly the whole day my editor, Cyril, who's a phenomenal dude. And so as she was talking and things, I'd text him pictures of the screenshots. I'd text him, you know, pictures of what they were showing on their little Jumbotron. And also it was a tiny Jumbotron. It was a mini Tron because it was a small room. And so I'd send him that stuff and then I'd send him quotes of what she said, which was pretty absurd. So he would live tweet it. And while this live tweeting was going on, I guess we were pissing him off,
Yeah,
for want of a better term.
The live tweeting did you in.
Yeah. So after, I think this other thing I did me in too, though. So after it was all over, because I didn't say a word to anybody, I just sat there, right? I didn't say anything to anyone.
I would have paid to see that.
Right? They had no idea the miracle that was happening. So when it was all over, people got up to leave, but some people said some crazy stuff, or at least it sounded crazy to me. Like in Michigan nowadays, a boy can start the process of getting his penis cut off while he's at lunch. And the person who
What?
The person who led the event didn't say, that sounds odd, or that's not true, or is there anything to substantiate that? Instead, everybody in the room went, ooh, you can get your penis cut off at lunch.
And I guess they're serving hot dogs at lunch. Is that pigs in a blanket? Is this what's next? Oh my God.
So I thought that those people might, if I could catch these people in the hallway, maybe I could get them to elaborate, seeing as the person leading the event didn't think that maybe that should be challenged in any way, the premise that over lunch you could start getting your penis cut off. So the other person was a woman who was running for school board somewhere in Pennsylvania, as they do. And she said that Governor Shapiro had allowed a fifth grader to decide that there should be mental health, not services or therapists, just there should be mental health in the schools. And he allowed this fifth grader to say that. So when I got outside, she's the first person I was looking for. And so I found her in the hallway. Now, we were escorted into the room to make sure we didn't accidentally go to the wrong place or on purpose. But nobody escorted us out. Nobody said, don't talk to people in the hallway. Nobody said anything like that. So I saw this woman. I did what I do as a journalist. And I said, hey, do you mind taking a minute so I could ask you a few questions? So she, of course, could have said no, but instead she said yes. And when I asked her the questions, I said, so you're upset that the governor is going to have mental health services in the schools? And she said, he's going to have mental health teachers. I said, they're going to put mental health teachers in the school? She said, yes, they're teachers. The teachers and the administrators. They're going to have these mental health people in the school. And I said, well, so if we were going to move this conversation over to gun control and mass shootings, I think you'd probably be I don't want to speak for you, but you'd probably be one of the people who says we need more mental health because that's what causes shootings, not guns. And she said, well, that's true, but that's why I think we need police departments in the schools. We need to locate the police department in the schools. And I said, so that's the solution, not mental health? And she said, yes, because teachers and administrators work for the government. So I said, so I'm pretty sure the police department works for the government too. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end. So then when she said it was different,
here's my problem. Stop. Here's my problem. You need a license to get a dog. Clearly, anyone can have a child.
Oh, and clearly, anyone can run for school board.
Clearly, I cannot believe that someone that has children, has reproduced, has procreated, cannot believe that we allow that.
So she said it was different, the different part of the government. So I said, well, if you win your school board seat, won't you work for the government? And that's kind of when she got really upset. And she said, yes, but I'm a mom, your point about having kids, and I've already proven myself as a mom. So it's different. And I didn't get the time to say teachers are moms, administrators are moms, cops are moms. But anyway, so then when I was leaving, I stopped talking to her because I had enough to write my story. I saw the woman who led the whole thing, and she had said that critical race theory was being used in sex ed to, I
got to hear this. How is critical race theory in sex ed?
Well, there's a new kind of sex ed which incorporates critical race theory in order to change our social structure, and that they're already doing it in Canada. And you can read all my stories at the Bucks County Beacon. Like I looked up so this was one of the villains in the world is Canada. They do this special sort of teaching where you get critical race theory at the same time that you find out about sex. So I looked up, and she said it's been happening in Canada for much longer than the United States. So I got some statistics, and it turns out that you're 16 times more likely to get raped in the United States than in Canada. So it sounds like Canada's got something going on that's really helpful versus what we've got going on, which is not teaching. Because really right now, according to this woman, the only place that's really using this sort of critical race theory sex ed is California.
Okay. And then I see now my mind would go to this place. I would give her a blank map and ask her to find Canada on the map.
Well, no, see, I wasn't belligerent in any way. I wasn't having fun with my food, which is what you would have been doing. I wasn't scooting the peas around the plate. I was actually trying to ask questions. And so I asked her, because she had mentioned that something really bad happened to her in 8th grade, but she didn't need to go to a teacher for it because she had a mom. So I said, well, what about the kids who don't have a mom like yours? You do know there are kids with moms don't have moms like yours. I said, you do know that, 90% of the kids under 13 who become pregnant or some similar statistic are impregnated by a family member. So maybe going to mom isn't going to be helpful because stepdad is the problem. And every time I asked her a question like that, I just got like nothing.
Yeah. See,
no
here's
answer.
The thing.
No, just a stare, just the blankest of stares.
Yeah, here's the thing. They're not really put out to actually fix things. They want to break stuff. They want to get attention. And I look at this Moms for Liberty group the way I look at what the Tea Party turned into. This wasn't just a couple of moms who cared about their kids and started a Facebook group. No, this is big money. These are well-connected operatives with big money. And look, you were there. I'm sure you could attest to this. They have an agenda to destroy public education and control what our kids. These are the real indoctrinators. These people want to shove religion down our kids' throats. They want to shove guilt and repression and all of that garbage down our kids' throats out of the name of, we're just good moms.
Well, I'm a big Acma's razor fan, and I've never used it so much as I have the last 4 days. But your simplest solution's usually the correct one, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think happened, and this is just my theory, and I'm just a person who asks questions and writes down the answers. So I'm not saying I'm some sort of brilliant person here, but this is what I think happened. I think a whole pile of Brevard County school board members, or wherever those women are from in Florida, they got their panties in a bunch about masks and about school shutdowns. And they got really pissed off. And they wanted their kids to go back to school, and they didn't want to have them have to wear masks, even though no one ever discusses the fact that they have to wear pants, right? There is cloth mandated on our children already. But anyway, so they got all whacked out about that. And then a couple of 8 billionaires saw that and thought, hey, they can really get people worked up. This is the talisman we can use to pull people together and coalesce them in a worked up fashion, right? So I think these people are just so out of it that they were like, oh my God, I'm all upset about these masks. And the puppeteers say, oh, this is the perfect puppet, right? And so then what they found out, and what I found anecdotally from interviewing way too many of these people, was if you talk to someone who started 2 years ago when it started, why did you get into it? The masks. If you talk to somebody in the last 8 weeks, why did you go into it? Sacks, book banning, all this other stuff. So what they did was, when the mask thing petered itself out, pun intended, when the mask thing went away, then they had to, so we've got all these billionaires who are having fun with the strings, right? What can we get people whacked out about again? And it was a constant, absolutely overwhelming. And some of my best friends are clergy. Constant, overwhelming, stuff down your throat religion, just constantly. And they found a lot of disaffected people who don't feel like they get to pray in enough places. Like they can't pray in their head. They have to pray publicly, and they feel like they don't get to pray public enough. So they've knitted themselves to the Moms for Liberty. Oh, it's all about my First Amendment right to pray, or it's all about this. And so they've all knitted themselves together that way. And the billionaires are going, ha ha ha, we've got more people whacked out and angry. And the ones who got the masks off their kids' faces, they haven't gone away.
No.
They've just sort of morphed into the, I'm pissed off that somebody might have a transgender kid.
And now I'm making money at it.
Yeah, and I am sure that these people are being, they've been flown all over the country to Philadelphia for a nice vacation at bare minimum. I assume, I do not have anything to prove that. I don't know. I didn't do the research, but it just seems like, I looked into getting a hotel room because I had to stay with friends and I had to take the SEPTA, and I was already working 10 and 12-hour days, and then I had to take the SEPTA. I was exhausted. When I got back to their place, I had to write. And you're staying with friends, so you can't just say, screw you, I'm not going to say hi. So you had to talk to them for 40 minutes. And then, it was exhausted. I was getting 2 hours of sleep. But these people were all staying in the fancy pants hotels, right? So I thought, well, I'll see how much the hotel is for one night.
$400.
It's more than I was making to be there.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to take the SEPTA and do all the other stuff I was doing, right? So I just think that it's appalling. It's appalling. And one woman got up and she quoted Daniel and I came home and I called my buddy, the minister, Pastor Matthew, and I said, what is this Daniel stuff about first they tell you can't speak, and then next thing they do, they cut your penis off, which is in the Old Testament. And see, this has been happening a long time. And so I made my friend's head blow up because he's gone to seminary and studied this a great deal. And he's like, oh my God, they've totally destroyed the book of Daniel, which is not at all, there were eunuchs at the time, and they're just manipulating everything that might have a shred of something. And I feel bad about being on your show and babbling idiocy, but I literally am just repeating what they said.
Look, it's the reason I wanted you, Eric, because I think it's important to show these people as the kooks that they are. Because I've had people go, those moms for liberty, they're out there fighting for our children. I go, no, they're lunatics. They shouldn't have children. We should be looking into how dangerous they are to their own children.
It's really sad. And that was the other thing that they said a lot about was they're going to take your kids away. They're going to take your kids away. Like if you took the fear out. And so anyway, I got out of that thing and they were, so mad at me. I didn't know. They wouldn't tell me why, right? And so my story that's going up tomorrow is that I've done a bunch of digging on who the team was that was hired to let us in. And it said it was a crisis preparedness team. I've got a buddy who was the crisis guy for Flight 77 that hit the Pentagon in 9/11. So I called him up and I said, can I interview about, why would you have a crisis intervention team be your media consultant? Like, why wouldn't you have a public
relations team? Because you're the enemy.
Yeah, well, that was definitely the message, that we were the enemy. But it turns out that this is all just insiders from the Rick Scott campaign.
Oh, well, why is that not surprising?
It's not surprising. But why did it take me 4 days to figure it out? That's what I want to know. I had a lot to process, but these people that worked on this, and this is going to be my story, probably will come up in a couple of days because I've been writing nonstop for 5 days, and it'll take a while it takes a while for all of this stuff to sink in, let alone get written. But this team they're just, one of the women in this team she's just been nominated by the governor of DeSantis there for this Woman of the Year crap.
Of course.
You could get the Bucks County Beacon. Just get the Bucks County Beacon. You can read about other great stories and other great journalists. You can see the really good work they're doing. But you can also see I've gotten to the bottom of who these people were that shut me down. And I don't think they want anyone to know that the First Amendment does discuss freedom of the press. You do have freedom of speech and you have the freedom to worship, but it's also the freedom of the press. And there was no freedom of the press there. And the other thing that's bothersome is if they had said, don't live tweet, don't talk to people in the hallway, I wouldn't have done it. Right? I would have obeyed the rules, but there were no protocols. Yeah. They gave us no information. So afterwards, after I would get out of the way because they would answer me, I'd say, is there a chance I could get into this thing? And they'd write me these really smarmy emails, which by the way, I kept. Why are you writing me emails, you morons? So they wrote me these really smarmy emails that said, isn't that cute? Thank you for asking. Like making fun of me, right? And for wanting to get more information to tell our readers, which is my job. So when I would leave the other journalists, they'd talk to the other journalists and say, you don't want to be like that. You don't
And
want to be in trouble.
we'll cut your access off.
So yeah, don't want to be like that. And so what I did was I just gave them all a copy of the audio I made when I was in the one that they told me not. You know, like here, you other news outlets, let's airdrop all the information I got. It's because they don't want you to have it.
No,
So,
that's the thing. There should have been someone in each one of those panels recording the idiocy and the insanity that these people are spewing. A lot of this comes out of the Q stuff. You got all those Q crazy people in there who around every corner are child molesters and pedophiles. And look, there are some, yes, but not in the pizza shop basement that doesn't exist. Not everywhere is that there. Now, again, what's interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this. These folks, the V card is big, the victim card really big, the victimization card strong with these people, isn't it?
Right. Well, they are victims. That's the end of the story. They are paranoid. They wear their white privilege as though it was some sort of an anchor, when it's obviously the thing that's raised them so much higher than the people around them. I saw someone posted a video of them complaining that they were getting booed or panned.
Karen's not happy.
As they walked by the protesters to walk into the hotel. I stood in the pen, the media pen. There's a little thing they rope off. We can't leave it. I stood in the media pen while several candidates, but especially, of course, Donald Trump, but several candidates pointed to us and said, that's the enemy. That's the enemy. They're the liars. I mean, I'm old enough to hear an insult and think, well, maybe I deserved it. That crap we were brought up on when from a wrong generation. And I had to say, why are they insulting us? I mean, we're sitting there doing our job, and then and then adults in front of me would turn around with their kids and point at us, and then groom their kids to hate the media. And you and I are both in the media. Sure, there's times when I've done my job and I thought, boy, I wish my TV producer would let me, move this story forward in a different way. But we're all just doing our jobs. And it was unbelievable how picked on and victimized, like you said, and
well, it's to get you to
get them. And it's like, for crying out loud, if you had something valuable, I'm willing to print what you say and tell the story, and you're afraid to say it. So that's my fault.
Well, it's to get you in line. It's to get you to say what they want you to say and not think about all of the other stuff and not report the negative. You've got to be a sycophant. Then you're okay. Then you get access. Then you get backstage treatment. You get to eat from the buffet.
Yeah. Well, that Vivek Ramaswamy, excuse me for just calling his name, the presidential candidate, there was a Chinese reporter, I'm thinking Chinese, Asian reporter, with a rather heavy accent, who said, how do you feel about China? And he said, how do you feel about your Chinese policy? What would your Chinese policy be if you were elected? And he said, I don't discuss my adversaries, and I don't buy shoes from my enemy.
Well.
And I'm like, wow.
Well, look, that's the Republican line. We don't discuss our policies. And so, because you don't get to know, you'll just have to find out when you elect us. But Pat, I got to tell you, props to you for having the courage to go into there and deal with that. I appreciate you coming and sharing some of it. Real quick, what's the one thing you're going to take from that weekend? What's that one little tidbit?
I never want another one of those assignments. I mean, the people the guys who've been there, the 30th Trump rally, God love them. They're heroes. They're the heroes of the media. The other thing is, I just wanted to say to everybody, shut your cameras off. These people don't deserve to be covered.
There you go. Good stuff. Yeah. Pat, appreciate the time. Good on you. Our good friend Pat LaMarche. I got to tell you, give her credit. I give her credit for standing up and going and doing the hard work. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast and check out buckscountybeacon.com. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1835. That was the day that textile workers walked off the job at 20 mills in Paterson, New Jersey. But this was not a strike like we might picture one today, with burly men walking the picket line or women chanting as they carry picket signs. In Paterson, most of the strikers were children, ages 10 to 18. Many were young girls. Child labor was in high demand in the silk mills because of their small, nimble fingers. The children walked off the job because they wanted an 11-hour workday and a 6-day work week. They were tired of working 13 grueling hours a day, 7 days a week. Soon, their parents formed the Paterson Association for the Protection of the Working Class to support the strikers. There were no labor unions in Paterson back then. The company refused to negotiate. Women textile workers at other mills in the area also walked off the job. At its peak, 2,000 workers had walked out on strike. Finally, after 6 long weeks, the company agreed to a compromise. They settled on 5 12-hour days and 9 hours on Saturday. The children went back to work to a 69-hour work week. Strike leaders were blacklisted from the mills. This would not be the last time that child laborers took a stand on the job. In 1912, children workers were an important part of the famous Bread and Roses strike of Lawrence, Massachusetts textile workers. In 1933, children workers in Allentown, Pennsylvania sweatshops joined in a strike. Their participation led the governor's wife to join them on the picket line. The strikers there won an increase in wages and reduced hours. Children fought against their exploitation by taking to the picket lines. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
The political extremists demanding that government control every woman's personal reproductive decisions claim that they are pro-life. But that's a rhetorical fraud. Look at their overall policy agenda, and you will see that they are merely pro-birth. After that, adios, baby, good luck. They consistently join Republican lawmakers to kill public programs that deliver essential real-life needs to babies after they're born. Consider child care, a fundamental need in any society. Yet, the leaders of our rich, sophisticated nation that supposedly treasures family, work, and children have created a Menji system that literally is a crying shame, revealing that our society deliberately does not care for children. Here's reality for you. 98% of American workers are better paid than those we entrust to care for our children. Working at a nail salon, loading boxes at an Amazon warehouse, flipping burgers at McDonald's are jobs given more pay and respect than most child care jobs. This is not just a poor people's problem, for the lack of child care availability, affordability, and quality is a looming crisis for a majority of American families. Nonetheless, Republicans, enabled by corporate Democrat Joe Manchin, recently killed funding for a program to both raise worker pay and lower the prices families are charged. Such care is too expensive, squawked the same lawmakers who routinely dole out billions in welfare to corporate profiteers. But wait, the GOP has come up with a genius, low-cost solution. Relax safety and educational requirements for child care centers, as Iowa and Montana have already done, allowing 16-year-olds to provide care for up to 15 children each. This is Jim Hightower saying, to support life, not just birth, join up with the First 5 Years Fund, ffyf.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, I'm looking at the video from Ron DeSantis and the campaign and just going, wow, Pete Buttigieg was right. Trying to prove your manhood by putting up a video that splices images of you between oiled up shirtless bodybuilders is kind of curious. And I watched DeSantis's team's video and it screams, I want to come out of the closet. It screams, break me out. Yeah. Now Buttigieg hit it, right on the head again. And I like the guy. The guy's spot on. He said, with doing something like this, who are you trying to help? Who are you trying to make better off? And what public policy problems do you get up in the morning trying to solve? I mean, that really is the question when they do this stuff. Why are you in public office if your job is to make people's lives worse? It's weird. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. That's our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So what did you think of the video that the DeSantis folks threw out there?
Well, I'm just surprised they didn't put the theme song YMCA on it. I mean,
copyright infringements.
I seriously thought, Rick, this is when I saw this, because it was sent to me. I didn't, see it on a news clip. I seriously thought it was from The Onion. I thought it was an AI-generated spoof. Yeah. I really did. And then I watched it, and then I rewatched it, and I thought, who in their right minds could have produced this thing?
Yeah.
Then, of course, DeSantis, people tried to defend it. They're the ones that launched it on the last day of Pride. But you've watched it. If people haven't watched it as they're listening, Google it and watch it, because it goes from attacking Trump, which, by the way, when Trump made that speech, I was at the national convention, and I was about, I think, 14 rows back up in the press section.
That's where I was.
And two people, yeah, right, it's the same convention, two people that were sitting next to me, one was from Ohio, and he was like in shock. And I said, well, don't be so much in shock. Trump's from New York. He knows a lot of people in the LGBTQ community, and Supreme Court's ruled, and I don't think he's going to try to reverse the Supreme Court decision, by his statements. But the point, is that Trump made those statements at the convention. He then won, Republican nomination. So number one, what was DeSantis trying to do? Number two, DeSantis cannot get away from LGBTQ issues, period. I mean, he is so in it that I guess if you're running for president or not of LGBTQ America, man, DeSantis, I guess, is the number one, candidate. If you're running, because there's a lot of issues that affect people in this country, I guess DeSantis is not the candidate. I think this one stick a fork in him. But on top of it, the ad was so, in a way, almost terrifying, and going into this shaking of the screen and this drum beat and the oiled up guys, and then a picture of DeSantis, and wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's screaming, come on out. Come on down, open up the closet door. And that's where my mind went. But here's the good thing, and I think you hit this. The good thing is I think the American people are looking at him going, no. I know you got a war on what you call woke, and you've shown you hate gay people. Yeah, we got that. We got the hate gay people part. And the thing is he's not rising in the polls. It's not helping him. It's actually weighing him down, because I've seen a bunch of articles that, I was a DeSantis supporter, and then I saw that video, and that's the bridge too far. So I think there's that line of, you can hate, you can do your shtick, but then you go too far. You seem like maybe you got problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's not difference of opinion. The ad comes across as somebody that, I don't know, he was like he was running for president of Syria or something. I mean, it. I don't know what to make of it.
Sharia law kind of.
Yeah, right.
I've been saying for a while, these people want to bring a Christian version of Sharia law. This is the guy who leads that charge.
This was like he was running for a position as head of, autocratic regime, Syria, Iran or something.
No, it's and the weird thing is it kind of had like drag, like music you'd hear at a drag show, which is again really kind of weird. Stealing from the people you hate the most.
They had a drag queen come on and go and say "Make America Great Again," and that's how it started, and from there but it went into the most bizarre ending I've seen in a political ad, at least in my lifetime. I don't know what to make of it.
That is not going to help him.
He finished himself off, I think.
I want to get your thoughts on the most recent quote from Donald Trump, quoted by MSNBC. He said, how many presidents never get to the opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice? He said, I had 3. They're not happy about that, and maybe we'll get 3 or 4 more. Can you imagine? Let's have 7 or 8 or maybe even 9. He wants to, if he wins, he wants to redo the whole Supreme Court, evidently.
I don't know. He might take us so far. It's good. You ever seen that before? Something goes so far to one side, it goes to the other.
Yeah.
You can't tell it apart. But he's saying all kinds of things. He says that. He says, during the whole debate and the negotiations between Biden and the Speaker of the House, he was there. Well, we've got to default sometime. I'm looking at the way this whole thing's running, and then DeSantis, and then Mike Pence in Paris with the head of a group. Her name is Maryam Rajavi. And I'm thinking, now this was Giuliani's group, by the way, that he was paid about $150,000, and John Bolton was paid like $100,000 by this group. And there's Pence over there. Is this like, let me show how extreme I can be month instead of Pride Month? It's let me show how extreme I can be.
Let's see how crazy I can be.
DeSantis and Pence are in a contest now.
See, here's the thing, and this is where I go back to, I blame everything on Ronald Reagan, and a little bit on you too. This tax cut fetish that we've had for the last 40 years, this idea that we need to slash taxes on the rich, slash taxes on corporation, we need to create this billionaire class of people who have just outweighed enormous wealth. I believe that created the scenario that we're in. You've got all these billionaires who have pet projects, and they fund it. Over the weekend, you had these maniacs for misery, the Moms for Liberty group, the new Tea Party folks, if you will, funded by by billionaire money to bring out the craziest of the craziest and put them out front and on stage and on every news media outlet. We gave these people so much power because of the money that they have that it's literally destroying our democracy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think to be fair, on the left and the right, on the budget process, you can have tax cuts, but you also have to have, you have to look at the spending side, and also times not to have tax cuts. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's went either direction. We spend, and they say, well, we can't have a tax cut, but we've got to spend more. Or they had tax cuts which didn't help, in particular, obviously, the long run of the economy. And then on the rich people too, I always said this about John McCain. He created loopholes you could drive Mack trucks through. I've never liked the fact that George Soros or the Koch brothers can have these PACs or Karl Rove that you don't know who's given the money.
Yep.
You don't know. And so what we have done, and because I know at one point in time, some Democrat friends of mine, colleagues in the Congress, were upset because Soros was spending money against them.
Yep.
And so you look at this, and it's the loopholes. They empower a lot of rich people. Obviously, I agree with that.
No, here's the thing. I agree with Jesse the Body Ventura, former governor of Minnesota. There should not be one billionaire. It's obscene. Shouldn't be any billionaires. We should tax them out of existence, as we did in the 50s, as we did in the 40s. The reality is giving them that kind of power, that kind of influence, that kind of ability to buy TV networks and not make any profit but pursue an ideological agenda is dangerous for democracy, and we're seeing it playing out right in front of us. At least that's my thoughts.
Power in the hands of a few, and it's happened on both sides of the spectrum. And like I said, I don't understand how these groups, political people have to list who gives them money. I have never understood it, and I argued with McCain about this. He said, well, that's soft money, that union and corporate soft money. But what he wouldn't address is the fact that you could create these groups and they were allowed to collect whatever they want and not tell who's giving the money. And
you mean like Moms for Liberty? and their super PACs and their state political action committees and all the. It's
All-
interesting
all
how
these-
these handful of moms who just care about their children and love their children and want the best for their children figured out how to wield through the 501c3 thing and figured out how to set up national super PACs so they could take all this dark money. And interesting how that happens.
Yeah, and there's groups that have done it all over the place, and to the right and the left. And I just never thought. I thought, if you give a dime, you tell who you are.
Yeah, I'm there with you. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here talking with my good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. I want to get your thoughts on the evidently there's some voting machine changes coming along, certification guidelines that are about to change on voting machines. And the fear is lots of misinformation, lots of crazy, lots of crazy people freaking out. Any chance that this wave of misinformation is headed off, or are we in for another 2020 and 2024?
No, I mean, there's this whole crisis that they're talking about already. There's going to be guideline changes for the voting machines. And so now, when that happens, obviously people are going to freak out about it. They're going to freak out about it, before it happens. Now they say that there's good reason to be worried. Obviously 2020 supporters of Donald Trump were convinced it was stolen, and so they're obviously extremely angry. The new standards are an update after a lot of years of work of the Elections Assistance Commission, which, by the way, for matters of disclosure, I created in my bill, Help America Vote Act. And they're broadly supported, as I understand it, at least when I checked in on this, in the election community. They were adopted by the commissioners of the Elections Assistance Commission. Now, by the way, the Elections Assistance Commission cannot promulgate rules. Steny Hoyer and I, the House main co-sponsor with me, we made sure that they couldn't institute, federal rules, but they do have the guidelines.
Right.
And so they formally adopted them, and they believe that there's a lot of requirements that's going to help cybersecurity and access to voters with disabilities. So, they're going to be rolled out in November. Now, it's going to be a year ahead of the election, but I can promise you that people are going to go, sky high. They're not going to decertify machines, all right? They're talking about, depreciation of machines and, replacements, and I don't know what they're offering money-wise to do that, but they're not going to decertify, again, machines. So we'll see what'll come out of it, but it's just like the person that calls me up and said Mickey Mouse voted 92 times. I'd like, where at? Tell me, where did it happen? I'd really like to know. So Steny and I created the Help America Vote Act, which created the Elections Assistance Commission. Of course, there's conspiracy theories that we then somehow jointly decided to elect certain presidents, which I don't think Hoyer would have been part of electing George Bush.
No, I don't think that at all.
No. And so let's see what happens. They're going to roll them out.
Yeah.
And, it's basically after 20-some years, it's a tweak of the system. So every system used in 2024, it'll be certified under the old standards, not necessarily the new ones. So there's going to be pre-panic over something that's not going to be undermining the election systems.
All right. Well, we'll see how it comes out. I saw this and I got to get Bob's thoughts on this. Lastly, I want to get into the area of evidently we're recommending that Americans reconsider going to China. Evidently, we've got a travel advisory going to China because they, I guess 78-year-old person, 78-year-old U.S. citizen has been sentenced to life imprisonment for spying.
Well, I think what you're going to see, obviously, with this, whole deal with China, there's going to be people that are going to be, potentially set up. I don't know the case, but I can't imagine that was an active spy by any stretch of the imagination.
Unless the CIA is getting really desperate.
Yeah, or unless they brought some people out of retirement. But yeah, there was a 78-year-old U.S. citizen was sentenced to life imprisonment on spying charges. And now they're saying reconsider your travel, be careful. So this is, after this happened. I don't know the details of what happened on that case, but, obviously the warning's out there by the State Department.
So the question that I have now is because, I think we're finally waking up to the reality of, that we're in a we're heading towards a Cold War with China,
right,
or we've been there for a while and we're just now waking up to the reality. And I would argue we've probably been here for a very long time and now just, waking up from the fog of cheap plastic crap. And I look at the, this Defense Authorization Act that's coming up, and the fact that McCarthy is evidently they're claiming there's going to be a hard time getting this through. This is another one of those moments where this partisan wrangling that's going on, probably not such a great idea. Thoughts?
Right. I think we've got to be united on China. And look, China got what it wanted with the permanent trade status, and then it was all happy days. Oh, we're going to change things. We're going to buy your products. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Then they flooded the market with cheap products, which unfortunately a lot of people bought. And then once they put the American companies out of business, like the toy companies, for example, and glass makers and others, once they put them out of business, then the prices went right back up, high as anything else, and nothing much changed when it came to obviously human rights and China and working wages. And we just got our lunch handed to us, and we got aggressive back with it. And it was a rock and hard place, because if you didn't get aggressive back with them, which Trump and Biden have both done, then you're going to get walked on, and it's going to get worse. At least now we're starting to say, hey, we had supply chains disrupted because of COVID in China. We better do something about it. Hey, we better build some chip factories. At least that is starting to happen, with the look towards the manufacturing base. So yes, we are in a Cold War. And again, I don't know I couldn't find it of what exactly happened with the 78-year-old man. But for the United States to give a warning over one person, something happening to one person, then they must have really felt that China is going to be doing this to other people.
Yeah, good luck. It's coming more and more. Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Something that I said got on your nerves, under your skin? Want to hear about it. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. If you missed any portion of the program, it's all right there. Quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1860. That was the day Charlotte Perkins Gilman was born in Hartford, Connecticut. Her father abandoned the family when Charlotte was an infant, leaving them in poverty. This forced the family to move around frequently. Charlotte's education suffered as a consequence, as she attended 7 schools in 4 years. Charlotte often found escape from the chaos of her home life at the library. She drew on these experiences of financial instability at home to become a leading voice for women's economic independence. She was best known for her works of fiction. Charlotte's most famous work was a short story called The Yellow Wallpaper. It drew from her own experiences with postpartum depression. She wrote prolifically about women and work. In 1898, she published Women and Economics. The book made the case for women's economic and social rights. It was translated into 7 languages. Some called it the Bible of the early 20th century women's movement. Along with writing books, Charlotte founded the magazine The Forerunner in 1909. Until 1916, the magazine served as a platform for her thoughts on important women's issues of the day. As an accomplished writer, she delivered speeches across the country. While Charlotte was a leading voice for women's rights, she was much less progressive on racial justice. She gave speeches on nationalism and called for white racial purity. Much of her writings and speeches focused on the role of mothers and a call for increased economic independence for housewives. Her ideas on women were considered radical for her time. In 1935, Charlotte learned she had inoperable breast cancer, and she took her own life. After her death, many of her writings were forgotten. In the 1960s and 70s, as the women's rights movement gained momentum, her writings were rediscovered by another generation looking to advance women's rights. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. So a couple quick emails I want to get to. Janice sent me one saying, Rick, have you seen the story that migrant crossings are down? She says that since May 12th, the average number of daily crossings has gone down by over half, according to the Homeland Security data. I did see that, and it made me think, I'll tell you, the first thing I thought of, when's Fox News going to talk about MS-13? Because they don't have this talking point anymore. The borders are being invaded. You got to scare somebody with something else. Now, as I also understand, Homeland Security is saying, look, don't take this as great news, because it probably is going to pop back up. Because look, more people want to come here. The economies of most countries around us, not great. In fact, the global economy is not in a great spot. We are doing internationally, we're doing pretty good. We're doing really well. And as much as Republicans want to drive us into recession, as much as they want that economic chaos, it just hasn't happened. And that's a testament to a bunch of stuff. One, we've got a large, resilient economy. And two, look, the administration is smartly spending resources to help communities, make it through this. Now, I wish we would be spending more in places like I was this past weekend, to build infrastructure that would encourage manufacturing to return, and then using government procurement to be able to say, look, refill these factories with products and we will buy them. I know that's socialism according to my friends on the right, but the reality is when we had the strongest, best economy for working people, that's what we did. We used our tax dollars, that's right, to buy stuff that we need, to make sure that we created jobs that we also need, and made sure that those were union jobs that paid good wages, good benefits, retirement security, built that middle class everyone likes to talk about. That is something we need to do. Also, Clifford in Santa Monica sent me an email, said, right said Fred, regarding the Supreme Court's dreadful decisions this past week to overturn affirmative action programs at Harvard and UNC. When they apply to elite schools, children of the well-behested get to pull themselves up by their parents' bootstraps through legacy admissions. George Bush being just one glaringly obvious case in point, as you often pointed out. To boot, barely a passing murmur from the conservative gasbags on Fox and OAN about how the genocide of indigenous populations, along with the theft of their land and resources, constituted, in a sense, affirmative action for whites and their descendants for centuries. That's an interesting frame. It's interesting how we rewrite history to benefit ourselves. It's interesting how the affirmative action thing's been rewritten. It was to get people to be able to get into those elite schools who were qualified. They want you to believe, it wasn't. These were just people they plucked out of. The only reason they got there is because of that. No, these were people who were qualified. Much more qualified than I was never getting into Harvard. Not only didn't have the grades, I also didn't have the money. It just is what it is. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Weird thing is, I didn't think college was a place you went to learn until I was like 15. That was the product of where I grew up. Because the only people I ever saw go to college were athletes. Our poor and poverty communities need help. Thanks for being here. See you back here next time.
been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.